the cast of The Love Boat reunited for the first time in over 40 years. Take a look at this. The classic TV show The Love Boat was honored in California this week. The cast of the show were celebrated by the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce.
Behind the sun-soaked deck chairs and sparkling ocean views, The Love Boat was a floating pressure cooker. Millions tuned in every weekend for pure, mindless paradise, totally blind to the cutthroat reality happening off-camera. We're talking brutal network ambushes, sudden terminations, secret backstage chaos, and stars walking away at their absolute peak. So what really went down behind those pristine white uniforms? Grab your deck chair. We're tearing back the curtain on the high seas. Lauren Tewes, Julie McCoy. When you picture The Love Boat, you picture Lauren Tewes. With her infectious smile, razor-sharp efficiency, and endless supply of clipboards, cruise director Julie McCoy was the undeniable beating heart of the Pacific Princess. For 7 glittering seasons, Tewes wasn't just a fan favorite, she was a bona fide pop culture icon, welcoming a star-studded carousel of guest stars every single Saturday night. But while her on-screen persona made high seas hospitality look completely effortless, her off-screen reality was rapidly spiraling into total backstage catastrophe. Tewes was thrown into the Hollywood pressure cooker practically overnight. Wait, how? After auditioning just 24 hours before the series began shooting, she went from a struggling actress waiting tables to one of the most recognizable faces on global television. The grueling production schedule, paired with the sudden tidal wave of international fame, took a devastating emotional toll. To cope with the relentless hours, Tewes turned to illegal substance, a choice that quickly escalated from a dangerous habit into a full-blown, life-altering addiction that utterly consumed her life behind the scenes. As the seasons rolled on, the substance abuse began leaking directly onto the set. The once dependable star started missing call times, forgetting lines, and clashing with network executives. Producers issued stern warnings, but the chaos only amplified. By 1984, the situation reached a critical breaking point. Production delays were costing the studio massive amounts of money, and the atmosphere on set had turned entirely toxic. Executive producer Aaron Spelling finally decided he had reached his absolute limit. Instead of helping his leading lady get into treatment, he coldly handed her a formal termination notice. The sudden news thoroughly shocked millions of viewers who had grown up watching the sunny cruise director solve everyone else's romantic problems week after week. Behind closed doors, though, the tragic writing had been on the wall for months. Tewes was abruptly written off the show, replaced by a revolving door of temporary leads before Pat Klaus was brought in to play her sister, Judy. Years later, Tewes spoke candidly about the devastating financial and emotional fallout of her brutal firing, admitting that the cutthroat Hollywood party scene swallowed her whole. She eventually managed to rebuild her life, stepping away from the harsh spotlight to become a professional chef. But her sudden departure remains the most infamous and tragic exit in the show's entire history. So, how exactly do you replace the undisputed queen of the ship while the cameras are still actively rolling? Fred Grandy, Burl Gopher Smith. If Julie McCoy was the ship's warm heart, Burl Gopher Smith was its chaotic, hilariously frantic soul. Played with brilliant comedic precision by Fred Grandy, the goofy yeoman purser spent 9 full seasons stumbling through wacky misunderstandings, chasing guest stars, and getting chewed out by Captain Stubbing. Grandy was a crucial pillar of the core ensemble, providing the fast-paced physical comedy that kept the show's light-hearted engine humming along smoothly. Viewers naturally assumed Grandy was a Hollywood lifer, who would happily ride the Pacific Princess directly into syndicate retirement. But beneath Gopher's clumsy, naive persona lived a hyper-ambitious, razor-sharp political mind that was quietly plotting a total career reinvention off-camera. Grandy wasn't your typical actor floating through Tinseltown. He held a degree in English literature from Harvard University, where he had been roommates with future news anchor David Eisenhower. While hamming it up in knee-high socks on network television paid the bills extremely well, Grandy's true passion lay far away from studio soundstages in the high-stakes halls of American political power. By the time 1986 rolled around, The Love Boat was wrapping up its legendary weekly run, planning to transition into a series of feature-length television specials. Producers fully expected their beloved purser to report back to the ship on schedule. Instead, Grandy dropped a bombshell on the studio execs. He was officially walking away from show business to run for public office. Swapping out his signature white shorts for sharp tailored suits, Grandy returned home to Iowa to launch a serious campaign for the U.S. House of Representatives. Hollywood insiders scoffed at the move, assuming voters would never take a sitcom goofball seriously when discussing complex agricultural policy and national budget deficits. But Grandy turned his television fame into a massive political asset, tirelessly touring small towns, shaking hands, and proving his policy chops were second to none. He shocked the pundits by winning the election, securing a seat in Congress where he served 4 consecutive terms as a formidable Republican lawmaker. Leaving behind the glitz and glamour of prime-time television for the grinding realities of Capitol Hill was a massive gamble. But Grandy never looked back. He traded canned laugh tracks for congressional debates, eventually transitioning into political radio broadcasting and non-profit executive leadership after his tenure in office concluded. While most actors fight tooth and nail to cling to their 15 minutes of fame, Grandy voluntarily walked away from one of the biggest hits on television to govern a nation. His exit stands as one of the most unexpected, wildly successful second acts in entertainment history, proving that behind every classic TV fool, there might just be a master strategist waiting to pounce. Ted Hamilton, Captain Thomas Allenford III. Long before Gavin MacLeod donned the iconic white hat and fatherly grin as Captain Stubing, the helm of the Pacific Princess belonged to a completely different man. In the original 1976 made-for-TV pilot, rugged Australian actor Ted Hamilton was brought in to play Captain Thomas Allenford III. Hamilton possessed undeniable screen presence. He was suave, commandingly built, and carried a suave oceanic charm that immediately caught the eye of viewers. On paper, casting a dashing leading man to captain a literal floating romance ship seemed like an absolute slam dunk for the network. But when executives hunkered down in screening rooms to analyze the test footage, they hit an utterly bizarre, unprecedented snag. Network brass at ABC didn't fire Hamilton because he was a bad actor, nor did he clash with producers over money or creative direction. Instead, they let him go because he was deemed unbelievably far too handsome. According to production legends and network notes, executives panicked when they realized Hamilton looked like an international cover model. Their logic was as hilarious as it was strict. If the ship's captain looked like a movie star, why on earth would any female passenger bother falling in love with the guest stars of the week? The entire premise of the series relied on everyday people finding quirky, unexpected romance with each other, not staring longingly at the dashing authority figure steering the ship. Hamilton's jawline was quite literally sinking the narrative balance before the show even launched. Executives feared his striking presence would overshadow the rotating cast of weekly celebrities, distracting from the episodic love stories that Aaron Spelling was trying to build. realizing they needed an authority figure who felt more grounded, approachable, and inherently fatherly rather than a dashing Hollywood heartthrob. The studio quietly cut Hamilton loose after that initial pilot wrapped. It was a bizarre double-edged sword of a firing that left the actor sidelined simply for possessing too much leading man charisma. Hamilton went on to land other roles in film and television, but his brief time as the ultimate romantic captain remains a legendary piece of television trivia. His exit opened the door for a total casting pivot, proving that in the hyper-specific world of network TV, being too good-looking can actually be a career-ending liability. Executives immediately went back to the drawing board to find a captain who could steer the ship without stealing every single heart on board. Dick Van Patten, Dr. Adam O'Neill. When executive producer Aaron Spelling launched the very first 1976 television pilot, he needed a doctor who could immediately instill a sense of warmth, witty charm, and seasoned comedic timing. Enter Dick Van Patten. Playing Dr. Adam O'Neill, Van Patten brought his signature genial demeanor to the ship's medical bay, serving as the calm, friendly anchor amid the high seas' romantic chaos. Viewers connected instantly with his cozy, paternal energy, and studio executives were thoroughly convinced they had locked down a foundational piece of their upcoming weekly hit. However, before The Love Boat could even officially secure its green light for a full series order, an unexpected phone call completely derailed those plans. Across town, another major network television project was rapidly gathering steam. Van Patten had simultaneously shot a pilot for a suburban family comedy drama called 8 is Enough, taking on the lead role of patriarch Tom Bradford. When both pilots performed exceptionally well with test audiences, Van Patten found himself facing a massive career crossroads. He was forced to choose between playing a supporting ship doctor on an ensemble romance comedy or taking center stage as the top-billed star of a primetime family drama. Recognizing the rare opportunity to lead his own weekly show, Van Patten made the strategic decision to jump ship and commit entirely to 8 is Enough. The departure forced Love Boat producers into a sudden casting scramble to fill the ship's medical office. Their loss ultimately became TV history's gain when Bernie Kopel stepped into the crisp white coat, transforming the character into the beloved smooth-talking Dr. Adam "Doc" Bricker for the entire 9-season run. Meanwhile, Van Patten's gamble paid off brilliantly. 8 is Enough became a smash hit, running for 5 seasons and cementing him as one of the most iconic TV dads of the late 70s. There was zero lingering bad blood between Van Patten and Spelling's production team. In fact, Van Patten would eventually return to the Pacific Princess years later, not as the Doctor, but as a celebrated guest star enjoying the luxurious amenities of the very ship he once helped launch. His smooth departure demonstrated how chaotic and unpredictable pilot season can truly be, where a single scheduling conflict can completely reshape 2 classic television legacies at once. With the ship's Doctor role successfully settled, what happens when network suits decide to completely blow up the rest of the crew's core dynamic? Teddy Wilson, Isaac the bartender. If there is one iconic image etched into the minds of the Love Boat fans, it's the smooth, finger-pointing welcome of Isaac Washington behind the bar. But before Ted Lang made that signature double finger point, an indelible piece of pop culture history, another actor originally held the shaker. In the original 1976 pilot, veteran actor Teddy Wilson was cast as the ship's original mixologist, Isaac the funky bartender. Wilson was a seasoned, highly respected comedic performer who brought a cool 70s streetwise edge to the role. He played Isaac as a slick, quick-witted operator who dished out sharp jokes along with drinks to the ship's wealthy vacationers. While Wilson's performance was undeniably sharp, executive producer Aaron Spelling and network suits felt something was slightly off once the test screening results came in. The original pilot was notoriously cynical and darker in tone compared to the sparkling fantasy viewers eventually fell in love with. Wilson's take on Isaac, while funny, carried an underlying bite that executives feared didn't quite mesh with the warm, escapist romance they were aiming to package for Saturday night family viewing. ABC demanded a total creative retooling, wanting the crew to feel less like edgy, detached professionals and more like an inviting, tightly knit family who genuinely loved helping people find romance. Rather than tweaking Wilson's characterization, the network opted for a complete recast to reset the bar's entire energy. Enter Ted Lang. Lang stripped away the cynicism and replaced it with radiant warmth, an infectious smile, and an upbeat, welcoming charm that instantly clicked with test audiences. Wilson was quietly let go, becoming a casualty of a massive network pivot designed to turn a cynical comedy movie into a squeaky-clean weekly ratings juggernaut. Despite being dropped from the high seas, Wilson didn't stay down for long. A brilliant character actor with incredible versatility, he went on to carve out a prolific career across television and film, appearing in classics like What's Happening?, Sanford and Son, The Golden Girls, and later starring as Sweet Willie in Good Times. Wilson proved that getting cut from a blockbuster pilot isn't a career death sentence. It's often just a detour to a legacy built on your own terms. Quinn Redeker, Captain Tom Madison. After parting ways with Ted Hamilton following the first pilot, producers were desperate to find the right authority figure to command the ship. For the 1977 follow-up TV movie, The New Love Boat, they tapped veteran actor Quinn Redeker to take the helm as Captain Tom Madison. Redeker was a polished, immensely talented performer who brought a steady, commanding presence to the bridge. On set, he delivered a crisp, professional performance that grounded the chaotic romantic storylines swirling around the ship. However, behind closed doors, executive producer Aaron Spelling and ABC executives were still agonizing over the central anchor of their potential weekly series. Redeker played the captain with a traditional stoic authority that made him feel like a genuine merchant marine commander. While completely believable, executives realized that a stern, realistic captain wasn't the right emotional match for a lighthearted, escapist romantic comedy. They didn't want a rigid authoritarian issuing orders. They needed an empathetic, warm father figure who could offer heartfelt romance advice to lonely passengers between port visits. As the network prepared to give the show a full weekly series order, the decision was made to make one final drastic change at the top. Redeker was quietly released, making way for Gavin MacLeod, who had just wrapped his legendary run as Murray Slaughter on The Mary Tyler Moore Show. MacLeod brought an instant, gentle warmth and approachable humor that instantly transformed Captain Stubing into the ultimate seafaring patriarch. Redeker gracefully stepped aside, shifting his focus to a stellar, decades-long career as a daytime television powerhouse on Days of Our Lives and The Young and the Restless, while also earning an Academy Award nomination for co-writing the story for The Deer Hunter. His brief stint in the captain's chair proved to be a critical stepping stone, forcing producers to finally pinpoint the exact secret sauce needed for their lead role. With two different captains thrown overboard before the series even officially premiered, could the network finally build a crew that actually stuck together? Sandy Helberg, Gopher the Purser. Long before Fred Grandy made Burl Gopher Smith a household name with his iconic knee-high socks and frantic double-takes, the ship's purser was played by a completely different comedic talent. In the original 1976 pilot film, character actor and Groundlings comedy veteran Sandy Helberg stepped on board to play the original prototype purser. Helberg was a gifted physical comedian with a sharp, neurotic edge, bringing a chaotic, almost frantic energy to the ship's administration office. He played the purser as an overworked, perpetually stressed-out young officer struggling to keep the ship's guest roster from descending into complete and total operational anarchy. While Helberg's comedic timing was undeniable, he ultimately fell victim to the massive network overhaul that swept through the entire cast after the first pilot finished testing. ABC executives were deeply concerned that the initial crew dynamics felt too disconnected and frantic. They wanted the core crew to function like a tight-knit family, rather than a group of stressed-out strangers who happened to work on the same ship. Helberg's intense, high-strung performance, while undeniably funny in a traditional sitcom setting, clashed with the easygoing, warm atmosphere that executive producer Aaron Spelling was desperately trying to construct. When the network ordered a second pilot to retool the entire concept, Helberg was quietly recast. The role was reworked into a much softer, more naive, and endearingly clumsy character, paving the way for Fred Grandy to step in and turn Gopher into an indelible pop culture icon for nearly a decade. Losing out on what became one of the biggest hit shows of the 70s and 80s could have derailed a lesser performer's momentum, but Helberg barely missed a beat. He immediately pivoted back to his roots in character acting and improv comedy, building an immensely successful, decades-long career across both television and major motion pictures. Helberg went on to appear in classic films like Spaceballs, This Is Spinal Tap, and History of the World Part 1, while racking up dozens of memorable guest appearances on iconic TV shows ranging from MASH and Night Court to Seinfeld. He also passed his immense creative talents down to the next generation. His son, Simon Helberg, would go on to achieve his own massive sitcom stardom as Howard Wolowitz on The Big Bang Theory. Looking back, Sandy Helberg's brief, forgotten turn as the original purser stands as a fascinating glimpse into what the Love Boat could have looked like if network executives hadn't demanded a warmer, gentler crew dynamic. Diane Stillwell, Sandy, cruise director. Before Lauren Tews made Julie McCoy an iconic television staple, the crucial role of cruise director went through a high-stakes, behind-the-scenes evolution. In the second pilot, The New Love Boat, actress Diane Stillwell stepped on board to play Sandy, the sharp, bubbly cruise director responsible for keeping the ship's guests happy and entertained. Stillwell brought a polished, capable energy to the role, demonstrating a natural charm that seemed like a perfect fit for a weekly series. Studio executives liked her performance enough that when ABC officially picked up the show for a full series order, Stillwell was fully expected to stay in uniform and lead the crew into television history. However, in the cutthroat, fast-moving world of 70s network television development, nothing was ever guaranteed until the cameras officially rolled for Episode 1. Just days before production was set to begin on the series premiere, executive producer Aaron Spelling and network brass decided to conduct one final round of auditions. They felt the cruise director needed an intangible, radiant warmth that could instantly captivate audiences week after week. A very specific, girl-next-door charisma that could anchor the entire guest star narrative structure. In a legendary twist of Hollywood fate, Lauren Tews walked into the casting office just 24 hours before filming was scheduled to start. Her audition was so magnetic that producers made the cold, last-minute decision to replace Stillwell on the spot. Stillwell was unceremoniously let go before she even had the chance to shoot a single scene of the regular series. becoming a casualty of a brutal 11th-hour creative recast. While missing out on a decade-long primetime goldmine was a crushing blow, Stillwell didn't let the last-minute firing stall her Hollywood ambitions. She immediately bounced back, carving out an impressive, long-running career in television. She went on to secure recurring and guest roles on top-tier shows like Phyllis, Laverne, and Shirley, Barney Miller, and later landed a starring role in the acclaimed drama series Over My Dead Body. Stillwell's sudden departure serves as a stark reminder of how incredibly volatile the TV casting process was during Hollywood's golden age of television. A single last-minute audition could instantly catapult one actor to international superstardom, while leaving another to pick up the pieces and rebuild their career from scratch. Terry O'Mara, Jerry, Cruise Directo. Long before Lauren Tews donned the signature navy blazer or Diane Stillwell took a turn with the clipboard, the very first person tasked with organizing High Seas Romance was Terry O'Mara. In the original 1976 made-for-TV pilot movie, O'Mara played Jerry, the prototype cruise director. She brought a poised, highly professional demeanor to the role, playing Jerry as a sharp, capable organizer who treated her job on the Pacific Princess with serious, business-like dedication. On paper, having a grounded, sensible lead at the center of the ship's social calendar seemed like a solid strategy to balance out the wild guest star shenanigans. However, when network executives at ABC gathered to review test audience data following the initial broadcast, they immediately identified a core structural problem. The pilot's tone felt too rigid, cool, and detached. Audiences weren't connecting with a cruise director who came across like a strict corporate administrator executing daily ship schedules. Executive producer Aaron Spelling recognized that for the show to succeed as an escapist Saturday night fantasy, the cruise director needed to feel less like a firm manager and more like an enthusiastic, deeply empathetic best friend who lived to help strangers fall in love. Realizing that Jerry's entire character concept needed to be rebuilt from the ground up, producers quietly released O'Mara from her contract as they commissioned a second pilot to completely overhaul the crew's chemistry. O'Mara's quiet exit marked the beginning of a chaotic game of musical chairs recasting process for the cruise director position that wouldn't finally settle until Lauren Tews was hired at the absolute 11th hour. Rather than chasing the fickle winds of network television development, O'Mara shifted her focus, continuing to work in the entertainment industry while maintaining a much lower public profile. Her brief, forgotten tenure in that first 1976 trial run remains an essential piece of Love Boat history. It proved that turning a rough TV movie into a multi-decade pop culture phenomenon required constant, ruthless tinkering until every single piece of the ensemble puzzle fit together perfectly. With 3 different cruise directors and 2 captains cycle through the docks before the show even found its footing, could the final replacement cast member survive the intense pressure when the weekly series finally neared its end? Pat Klaus, Judy McCoy. Replacing an iconic fan-favorite TV character is easily one of the most perilous tightrope walks in entertainment history. So, when Lauren Tews was abruptly fired in 1984 due to her ongoing struggles with substance abuse, producers knew they faced a massive uphill battle. They didn't just need a new cruise director, they needed someone who could seamlessly slide into the ship's tightly woven family dynamic without alienating millions of loyal weekly viewers. Enter Pat Klaus, a former top fashion model who had successfully transitioned into acting. Best known for her co-starring role on the hit series Flying High. Rather than attempting a direct, awkward recast of the beloved Julie McCoy, producers made a clever narrative pivot. They introduced Klaus as Judy McCoy, Julie's energetic, bubbly younger sister, who stepped on board to take over the clipboard and clipboard duties for the Pacific Princess. Klaus brought a fresh, vibrant, and incredibly warm energy to the deck. Her natural charisma and effortless on-screen presence helped stabilize the series during a volatile transition period, winning over skeptical fans and keeping the show's ratings steady through its 8th and 9th seasons. However, as the mid-80s approached, the television landscape was shifting dramatically. After 9 legendary years of high seas romance, network executives decided to bring the weekly series to a close in 1986, transitioning the franchise into occasional feature-length television specials. While several core cast members returned to reprise their roles for these reunion movies, Klaus chose a completely different path. Having experienced the peak of primetime television fame, she decided to make a permanent, life-changing exit, not just from The Love Boat, but from the entertainment industry entirely. Klaus voluntarily stepped away from Hollywood, trading bright studio spotlights and red carpets for a fulfilling, quiet second career as a registered nurse. She spent decades caring for patients, completely turning her back on show business without a single regret. In a town notorious for actors who spend their entire lives desperately chasing their next big break, Pat Klaus's calm, graceful exit stands out as truly exceptional. She came in, saved a legendary show during a major casting crisis, and then quietly walked away on her own terms to dedicate her life to helping others. Vicki Lawrence, Susie Duncan. When television superstar Vicki Lawrence stepped onto the deck of the Pacific Princess, she was already comedy royalty thanks to her iconic run on The Carol Burnett Show and her wildly popular character, Mama. In 1978, as The Love Boat was skyrocketing into a global phenomenon, producers brought Lawrence on board as Susie Duncan, a bright, fast-talking crew addition designed to inject fresh, high-energy comedic banter alongside Gopher and Isaac. On paper, adding a proven primetime powerhouse to the main cast was a guaranteed win for network ratings, and Lawrence's magnetic screen presence immediately shined in her featured storylines. However, behind the scenes, a major conflict was brewing between production schedules and network demands. Lawrence wasn't just a guest star taking a vacation at sea. She was one of the most sought-after comedic actresses in Hollywood, with TV networks competing for her full-time availability. Executives at ABC weighed, making her a permanent, multi-season fixture on the ship's crew. But Lawrence's skyrocketing career made a long-term commitment to a heavy ensemble shooting schedule almost impossible to coordinate. Furthermore, producers realized that adding another permanent, dominating comedic character threatened to overcrowd the tight-knit dynamic they had just spent 2 years perfecting among Gopher, Isaac, Doc, and Julie. Rather than altering the core operational chemistry that millions of viewers were tuning in to see every Saturday night, the decision was made to keep Susie Duncan's tenure brief. Lawrence gracefully wrapped her storyline and exited the ship, shifting her focus toward developing her own legendary headlining projects. Shortly after leaving the high seas, Lawrence landed her own hit sitcom, Mama's Family, which ran for 6 wildly successful seasons and cemented her status as a television legend on her own terms. Her brief stint on The Love Boat remains a fascinating what-if moment in TV history, a glimpse of how close the Pacific Princess came to completely reshaping its core cast dynamic around one of the biggest comedy stars of the decade. 9 seasons, 3 pilot movies, and dozens of cast adjustments later, The Love Boat proved that behind every flawless television paradise lies a storm of ruthless network calls, high-stakes personal gambles, and sudden career shifts. Whether they were ousted for being too handsome, fired mid-season due to personal struggles, or voluntarily trading script pages for congressional seats and nursing scrubs, these 10 actors defined the turbulent history of television's favorite cruise ship. Their stories prove that off-camera Hollywood is far more unpredictable, wild, and cutthroat than any scripted drama happening on deck. The Pacific Princess may have sailed off into syndicate history decades ago, but the wild secrets behind its revolving door of stars still keep us hooked. Which actor's sudden exit surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed pulling back the curtain on vintage TV history, hit that subscribe button for more uploads into your favorite classic shows.